Hey, so I am always getting requests to do a movie review with spoilers. So guess what? Today is the day. A lone shadow-like woman shrouded entirely in black appears on the family's front yard without explanation and warns them today is the day. Where did she come from? What does she want? When will she leave? Only the woman in the yard knows. And yes, that's the movie for today. The Woman in the Yard. Okay, pay attention because this movie was confusing at times. The movie follows a young widow, Ramona, and her two children, Taylor and Annie, as they are haunted by a mysterious entity in the wake of her husband's death. The movie opens with Ramona lying in bed watching a video of her husband telling her of a dream he had where the fixer-upper house they recently purchased was completely done and it needed a name. She watches it over and over again until her son comes up and tells her the power is out. That is when you see she has a severely injured leg and has to use crutches. Before standing, she asks for strength, something she has done every day since the accident that took her husband's life. They live in the middle of nowhere. The closest neighbor is several miles away. So, now we see Tay downstairs, feeding the chickens and gathering eggs for breakfast. He goes inside to feed the dog, and there's no dog food. He tries to light the stove, but there are no matches. He does find his dad's old lighter, so he does cook breakfast for his sister, his mom, and himself. Everyone's on edge. They are dealing with grief, the mother's depression, no power, and then Ramona looks at her phone, and it's dead. One of the kids look out of the window and state, "There's a woman in the yard." They watch her for a while, and then Ramona decides she's going to go out and confront the woman. She asks the woman if she needs help and who she is. The woman replies with, "How did I get here? Where am I?" And today is the day. When Ramona tries to tell the woman to leave, the visitor makes statements that indicate a psychic element. She knows about the children, the car accident, and Ramona's private thoughts. When Ramona doesn't get answers, she goes back into the house, but not before noticing all the chickens are dead. She runs to the Jeep parked in the garage to try and charge her phone, but the Jeep won't start. Then they look out the window, and the woman seems to be closer to the house, which I think happens every time Ramona gets upset or loses her temper, which she does a lot. Taylor decides to get his dad's gun and confront the woman in the yard. This is when she reveals that Ramona lied about what happened. When Taylor brings it up with his mom, she shares what actually happened the night of the accident. Ramona and David went out to dinner, but Ramona clearly wasn't happy. After David brought it up, Ramona said she was not happy with her life as it was. She said she gave up all of herself to the farm, to the marriage, and to the children, to the point she had nothing left for herself. Since David didn't want to move again, she threatened to leave him. They got into the car while still upset with each other. Now, she had told the kids their dad had been driving, but really, Ramona was driving. She drove through the rain while distracted, and the car ran into another vehicle, killing David. But before the crash, she looks in the rearview mirror, and what does she see? The woman. So, back to the present. The woman can use her shadow to knock things over inside Ramona's house, and once the family figures this out, they start drawing the curtains and closing the blinds. But even when they totally block out her powers within the room they're in, the family still goes and hides in what they think is the darkest place in the house, the addict. This is where you have to pay attention, close attention to the shadows on the wall, because this is when you can kind of figure things out just watching the shadows. While Ramona and Taylor argue about how to handle the situation, the woman destroys the house and grabs Annie. The woman hugs Annie, and the two of them disappear, which triggers Ramona to search down a dark, long tunnel for them, following a blinking flashlight that Annie dropped. However, rather than finding Annie, Ramona enters a recreation of the first scene. Remember I told you about the video she was watching of her husband telling her about a dream he'd had? When we first watched this, it had a romantic, playful vibe. But now that we know Ramona was the one driving the car the night David died, and that she has visions of murdering her own kids, yeah, I forgot to tell you that. She has visions of murdering her own kids. So there is a tragic feeling of guilt that exposed Ramona's words and actions. When she says she doesn't know what to call the form, it now sounds like a character that isn't sure because they truly don't want to be there. We soon realize this is the woman manipulating things because Ramona tries to leave the vision. But when she does, David wraps a sheet around her head, suffocating her. I think this is reflecting how Ramona felt controlled and crushed by the life she felt David forced on her. So now Ramona is suddenly back in the very first scene where we met the woman. But now she's watching herself limp up to ask what she is doing there. You get a repeat of the line, "How did I get here?" as well as seeing Ramona as the woman in the attic who took Annie. It may be confusing and out of left field, but it does help to show how Ramona and the woman are the same person, and that rather than an unwanted threat who comes to invade, the woman is actually an invited guest. Remember I told you every morning Ramona asks for strength. The woman is the answer to Ramona's prayers to give me strength. But the strength is not to go on as we first thought. From seeing the woman before crashing the car to visions of killing her children, the woman explains she is there to give Ramona the strength to kill herself. And that is why there's only one bullet left in David's gun. I think Ramona knew if there were more, she would kill the children. But now there is only one, only enough for herself. The woman shows her if Ramona kills herself, her children will grow up to have positive futures because she won't be there to hold them back, as she can no longer care for them in her depression. Obviously, this is bullshit. It is Ramona's depression and her own self-loathing that I think is speaking. Ramona asks if she can say goodbye to her children, and the woman wraps her arms around her, saying, "Of course." Ramona pushes them out of the house, but Annie gives her mom the Mr. Penguin toy she always carries to keep her mom company. Ramona sits in the same chair in the attic that the woman sat in the yard and puts the gun barrel to her chin, with the woman impatiently pushing her to pull the trigger. However, at the last second, Ramona sees her daughter's stuffed animal, the animal she always carried but left with her mom. We see the woman and Ramona squaring off with one another as two sides of the same psyche. Having sent her children away, deeming the house no longer safe, Ramona claims she wants to live, but the woman doesn't believe her. Ramona is forced by the woman to point the gun at her own head, signaling that these dark thoughts may ultimately get the better of her. Right as she is about to pull the trigger, though, the woman and Ramona become one, with the spirit being absorbed into the grieving widow's body. Next, you see Ramona walking from the place she had the confrontation with the woman, and her kids come running up to her, hugging their mom. So, you could get the impression that Ramona made it out safe and sound, leaving her depression behind her. However, that is not what I think. I think the accident was her first attempt at suicide, not thinking how it would affect her husband, David, which I think is an accurate description of how suicidal thoughts can make a person not think in a rational way. When the movie ends, we see Ramona, her children, and the dog who disappeared earlier in the film. I forgot to tell you that also. All of them walking into a fully renovated home. You also get a glimpse of a piece of art that is shown at different times throughout the movie. Only this time, it's in reverse and the signature is backward. It's like looking at it through a mirror. This tells me Ramona did take her own life. And the final scene is her in her afterlife. Let me save you a few dollars. See it on TV when it streams. This movie at times is confusing and the story is very choppy. Before the credits, you see if you or someone you love is experiencing suicidal thoughts, there are resources available. In the U.S., call 988 or visit 988lifeline.org for on-demand mental health and crisis support. This is another reason I think Ramona took her own life. I'm Giselle Cooper. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next week.